Hi, my name is Jeffrey Helleck. Today I'm going to be speaking about assertive communication and its kind of correlation with emotional intelligence, interpersonal communication, those kind of bases, and the positives that we see from it, as well as some negatives that we could come across, but mainly its benefits and its importance in our daily lives and in our future careers and that sort of thing, because it's just so strong in what it does. So let's be real. Let's be clear. We see assertive communication in our daily lives all the time, and we know that it is a way for someone to get their point across. But not only that, but it kind of is a way for us to express and show emotion with what we do. It is not something to be seen as rude or mean. It is not a way to attack people and be loud in the way that we speak. It is simply a way to more clearly state a subject without being too boring or being sub tier to our audience or to our peers, and allowing them to kind of lock in more when we're talking, and so that way they really do pay attention and they know that this is an important issue. It does as well create a very good understanding and respect for peers. So a lot of people might see it as, oh, it's yelling, or it's really getting onto the person. That is not the case. It will actually, if more people use assertive communication, there would be less confusion as to what's being discussed. And I've seen it in a lot of cases where understanding and trust is actually growing from assertive communication, because the other person knows exactly what the other person is saying, and they can come to a point where they both agree or both kind of see where the other person is coming from. Express and enhance. So enhance to express. It is extremely important to express your emotions when being assertive. A lot of people say that, oh, you don't want to get your emotions involved in things you talk about. That is wrong. You need to get those involved, because one of the main reasons people are so, one of the main reasons that people would want to listen to you, one of the reasons that people will be more involved in what you're saying is that they know that you're passionate about it. And one of the key things with assertive communication is that when you're assertive and you use those emotions and you get involved in your topic, people can't help but be involved as well. They all of a sudden have some kind of care for that topic. They have a care for what you're talking about, and they are more in tune, in sync with what you're saying. And so expressing yourself is vital. Now, don't get too involved to where you're getting offensive, and we're going to touch on that soon. You want to be able to express, but you also want to be able to read the room and see in what way you should be expressing. So this is where we slow down a little bit. When using assertive communication, you must be aware. You must be aware. It is vital that we don't get overboard with assertive communication, like people see it as being negative in that sort of connotation. I didn't touch on it last slide, but nonverbal cues are critical. Not only when listening. A lot of times you hear about when listening we can't have negative nonverbal cues, but also when talking you want to have those gestures. You want to look like you're passionate, like you want to talk about it. They will feed off that, and they will see that as something to be involved in, to invest in. So when we slow down here and we make sure that we're not going overboard with these nonverbal cues, that we are passionate, but yet we don't attack, and we don't use any you statements. We stick with I statements. Anytime you're talking about something and you're using assertive communication, not only to an audience, but especially to a relationship partner or to friends, you don't want to use anything other than an I statement. You statements are attacking. If you're using assertive communication and you statements, it can be seen as offensive. It can be seen as something negative in connotation. And so using those I statements are critical, because you're saying, I feel this way, I want this, I think this, and that is less invasive on them to be saying that. When using you statements, it can be seen more as direct. It can be seen as an attacking, as of like you're jumping on them, while trying to also be assertive with your words, and that might be seen as they need to start getting defensive. And defensive listening is not what we want. Defensive listening is not really paying attention, it's just shielding themselves from what you're saying. So when using assertive communication, you can't use you statements. You must stick with I statements to get your point across. And especially with those nonverbal cues as well, you want to be passionate, but don't be overbearing to where they're either felt that you don't want them to feel any aggression towards them. You want to be comfortable, you want them to feel comfortable, and you want to be approachable in that way. We see here, this is the incentivizing the strategizing. So one of the other articles that we have is managerial use post-COVID-19, and it is the managerial jobs post-COVID-19 are looking for people who can strategize and use assertive communication in the right tone. And so a lot of this comes from emotional intelligence. They were looking for people with emotional intelligence that have the ability to read a room, have the ability to deal with people from different backgrounds, deal with people with different opinions and different ideas, and bring them together and collaborate with them, not separate them. So one of the main things we've kind of been talking about is using assertive communication in the right way. So strategizing is also knowing when to not use assertive communication. When to not use assertive communication. It is not always proper, it is not always the right place to use it, so we have to be very aware of when to use it, and especially when not to use it. We see too many times when it's not the right time and place, it is not the right setting, the right environment, and it is a time to either sit back and listen and not say anything, or it's a time to say something but not with a confident, assertive tone, but more kind of laid back, more kind of polite tone. So these jobs are looking for people that know when to read a room and when to do that, and to stay away from a bad environment and stay away from situations where they could potentially offend or could potentially provide like a bad connotation for whatever you're talking about. So it's having that emotional intelligence, but it's also having the right mindset and right ability to have that interpersonal communication to know when and when not to use assertive communication. So wrapping up here, just do it. There are so many ways and there's so many reasons to use assertive communication in our daily lives, whether it be in front of peers, with a significant other, or that sort of thing. It's amazing because it really drives the point home. And so one of the other things I want to touch on real quick, ethics. Ethics is a huge thing with assertive communication as well, because when using it in that right environment, you have to be aware that you're using it for everyone. So for example, in a group project, if there are people who aren't on task and your buddy might be one of them, your friend might be one of them, you have to make sure that when you address the entire group, you address him or her, and you make sure that they're also following the rules. You can't let them off the hook. Once you use that assertive communication, it loses its validity as soon as you go back on it, as soon as you don't follow through with whatever you're saying. So going back over, don't use it in any offensive way. Make sure that you're knowing the time and place to use it. Make sure you are taking in all opinions and concerns from the group when using it, and or not necessarily group, but it could be an audience as well. Make sure that when saying things, you're using I statements and not you statements. And during whatever you're talking about, you're using those nonverbal cues. Make sure they're clean. Make sure they're not offensive in any way. Make sure that they're not taking away from what you're saying, because you want your listener to fully be kind of involved in what you're saying in the topic that you're talking about. So the more that you use assertive communication, the more benefits there are, but you do have to be aware of the negatives and of the right places to use them in, and to not slip up and offend someone in that way. But overall, assertive communication is great. It gets you managerial jobs, like said in the articles, and it's a way for us to better express ourselves. Thank you for listening.